All right, guys, what is up? Good morning. Welcome in Monday episode of GC Live. As always, brought to you by our guy, Clint Hammond of CMG Home Loans, ClintHammond.com. I'm going to tell you about Clint here in a moment. Of course, today's show pretty much dedicated to South Carolina's 51-7 victory over Coastal Carolina on Saturday. And probably we'll save most of the Clemson talk for later this week. However, happy rivalry week. We are officially there. It is upon us. Happy Thanksgiving week as well. I don't know, Chris. I feel like every time I kind of have talked about the end of the year, the Clemson game just kind of naturally starts to come up, like just in conversation. So maybe we do dive into it. We'll just kind of see where this show takes us. But first, again, this brought to you by our guy, Clint Hammond, ClintHammond.com, 803-422-6797. NMLS number 71597. And as we always tell you, you may not be in the market to buy a home right now. All we ask is that when that day comes, or if that's something you're kind of looking forward to and just kind of wondering, hey, is that something I can afford right now? What does that really look like for me right now in terms of where I am in life? Just hit up Clint. He will take a comprehensive look at your finances, kind of where you are in terms of those things, and let you know, hey, this is the direction you can go. Maybe we're going to avoid this direction and keep you on that right path. That's what he did for me. That's what he can do for you as well. Again, ClintHammond.com, 803-422-6797.
And our friends over at Ferry Chevrolet, another sponsor, great partner here on GC Live, ferrychevrolet.com. That's Fairey, Chevrolet.com. You can also give them a call, 803-937-4531. Since 1926, they have been in business and still family owned because Joseph Ferry is in charge over there. He is a fourth-generation dealer. Dealership is located conveniently in Orangeburg, so off of I-26, convenient to both Columbia and Charleston. And, of course, if you're in the Orangeburg area, very, very convenient to you. But you can also check them out online. Their new and used inventory of vehicles at ferrychevrolet.com. You can check out new vehicles, used vehicles. You can check out their financing options. You can get in touch with them there. If you are in the market or possibly in the market for a new vehicle, all we ask, give the folks over at Ferry Chevrolet an opportunity to earn your business. Great folks over there. Great inventory. Again, that's ferrychevrolet.com or 803-937-4531.
All right, guys. Gamecocks finally back on the winning side of this thing, back in the win column, defeating Coastal on Saturday. And, I was sitting there thinking, Chris, in the first quarter, remember what we talked about in terms of, man, it'd really be great for South Carolina if they could just start fast, if they could kind of give the fans a little bit of hope, give them something to cheer about. Like, they've been through a long, hard season. Kudos to the fans, by the way, man. The stadium looked great for it to be, you're a 3-win team. Coastal's coming in. I even saw some people anticipating, like, might be a half-empty stadium. Nope. Gamecock Nation shows up again. Looked like a great crowd, good atmosphere. And you were going, man, it'd be great if they could just kind of not let Coastal think they have any chance of winning this game. And what happens? You have Jaden Sellers, little screen pass. Dude, this play, we won't go all into it, but the level of execution for, like, I would dare say, like, almost all 11 guys on this play, on play one, was a thing of beauty. Like, I it's kind of teach tape type stuff. If you're a coach going back watching that thing, you get probably pretty excited. Some, like, lots of just various pieces to that play that made it be successful. But you go down, you score, come back out, you get a stop on defense, you score, come back out, stop on defense. I think there was a punt, then you score. I can't remember if the punt was before or after it was 20-0, but either way, you just kind of, there was no question at that point in my mind. Like, you already knew Carolina had a great shot to win this game, but that whole idea of just sitting through, if you're a Gamecock fan, that kind of, well, we're going to halftime and Coastal's only losing by 7, start to get the nerves going a little bit. It was more of just, I feel like, a celebration day, kind of a little bit of relief, even though the season has been a disappointment, just to sit there, watch some different guys go play, watch the offense play well. I'm sure there's a few things Beamer circled, like too many penalties on the O-line. I'm sure the block punt had him just furious inside. It's never going to be a perfect day at the park for a football team, right? However, there was a lot of good just in terms of let's give it the proper context. Yes, this was not Ohio State. This was not Texas A&M. Proper context. Let's go ahead and let's say that. Let's put that part out there. However, I do still think there is a place to acknowledge a team doing what they were supposed to do against the lesser opponent. And actually, if you're looking at the Vegas lines, doing more than you were expected to do against an opponent that you're supposed to beat.
It was nice, Wes, for once for South Carolina to catch a break going into a game. We all know that South Carolina's schedule has been among the most difficult this season. Now, obviously, you play the schedule that's in front of you, you have to have more success ultimately than South Carolina's had this season, which is why we're having all these, big picture conversations. That's why there is an OC search. That's why there's no line coach search, among other things. A lot of big picture conversations. But I looked up, Wes, in the stadium and had to go outside, or not outside, but in the concourse for a minute. And they had the college football playoff rankings up there. And you go, you're like looking at the top 10, right? You're like, South Carolina played that team. South Carolina played that team. South Carolina played that team. And a lot of these other schools haven't played any of them. It was nice to have an opportunity to go do something like this for once this season, right? And so a couple of things in that. One, that the only other game that was even in the same stratosphere as this was the game against SC State. Wes, we remember that game. Not fun times, right? I mean, that was a slog offensively early. Shane Beamer pointed out, hey, we've been in this kind of position from some teams from the same conference, Sun Belt Conference, last year against Old Dominion. You won. Ugly game. That was a really good team. That South Carolina team obviously ended up being really good. Sean Elliott's Georgia State team in 2022. You won the game comfortably by 3 touchdowns, but you blocked like 17 punts in the game, and that was really the reason that you won that game, not because you put forth this great offensive effort. So you look at this game, and you got 3 things mainly. A, you had a Sun Belt team, not an SEC team. No disrespect to Sun Belt, Coastal. They play good football in that league, but it's not the SEC, right? So it's nice to be able to take a step back from that. You also had a team in Coastal that was without their starting quarterback. Look back at what Samari Collier's done. Coastal first 3 games, they were 1-2. They're really scuffling on offense. They put him in the lineup, really coincides with starting to score more points and win more football games. 4-game win streak. He goes out of the Georgia Southern game with an injury. They lose that game, right? But they had scored 40-something points. Yes, proper context against Sun Belt competition, but they have been scoring some points. So Sun Belt team, they don't have Collier, their starter, who's really revitalized their offense. And then the third thing, Coastal has really struggled on defense. So when you're an offense that's looking to build off of the first half that you had against A&M on the road last week, try to get better, try to introduce some new concepts, which we saw in this game, certainly some of the creative things that they did. This was a good week to do it. Now, all that said, you still have to go out there and execute it. And it was not perfect. The block punt, which Beamer was definitely hacked off about. There were some penalties on the O-line that you're going, all right, let's make sure this is a 1-game regression. But you can't argue with the results. You pitch a shutout defensively, right? You have a lot of success on offense. There were 2 earlier drives, Wes, where South Carolina just misses getting a first down, and it's 4th and short. And Beamer says, there's no written, we're playing well on defense, playing well on offense, punt the ball. You very quickly did exactly what you wanted in this game, which is score early, flip the scoreboard early, put the pressure on Coastal to not be able to run the football, to get it into a throw game, to have to take some chances. And that's what they did. And they were able to shut it down very early. And Wes, I think you look who defensively the key stat, 1.6 yards per carry for Coastal. It's a team that rotates running backs. They like to run the ball. We've seen plenty of games in the past, not only at South Carolina, but other places where, oh, here comes a Sunbelt team, and they're rushing for 4 or 5 yards a carry, or, oh, you can't run the ball on this team on offense when you should. There weren't really any of those things for South Carolina. So, yes, there's a proper context here to discuss, but they did what they're supposed to do. And, man, that's nice to see. It's a day where you can get up early. You don't ever feel like the game's in danger. You can go enjoy the day, get a bunch of guys in who never get to play into the game, and it's a nice day.
Well, and let's also not forget the conferences. I can't keep up with anything anymore. But Jacksonville State, they were a Conference USA team when Carolina played them.
They not Sunbelt too?
You may be right.
No, you're right. You're right. It's Conference USA, I think.
Regardless, we all remember sitting through. That was the Stone Blanton pick 6 game where, I mean, you want to talk about rewriting some history? What if South Carolina loses that game?
Ooh,
so
yeah,
like we all remember sitting through that game, I think, and I don't know, maybe you want to forget that one, but this was just different. Like you said, no Collier, and really, I look at it as honestly, South Carolina, they did what they should have done against that version of Coastal, just to be completely honest. Like, I think even the line being 24, 23 and a half, whatever it is, it probably without Collier should have been a little bit bigger, but I think that's probably coming off of, well, hey, is this South Carolina team going to be motivated? And I don't think we can actually overlook that. That's maybe one of my biggest takeaways from the entire game, dude. And people roll their eyes at this too, but I don't really care. It's in today's college football world where what do we like to do? Players only care about money. What do we like to do? Oh, that guy's injured. Man, he's probably hitting the transfer portal. He doesn't care about his teammates. Doesn't care. All he cares about is himself and money. In that college football world, you don't get to also say, well, you don't get to say, well, I don't even know if they care anymore. I don't even know. This is the first game that South Carolina has played under Shane Beamer where they were not bowl eligible or were not able to be bowl eligible. Like, bowl eligibility was completely off the table, right? In a lot of people's minds, they might say this is a meaningless football game in terms of outward motivators, right? Well, I think when you look at the fact that this team came out, they didn't just go through the motions. Like, there were some hustle plays in this game. We saw it in play 1 where you have Jawarn Howell, who is like, this dude is actually a good bit faster than I believe I knew he was. Flying down the field, just looking for some work, right? Like, looking for somebody to hit. You got Donovan Murphy, you got Jared Brown blocking on the outside, just going after it for most of the game, right? I saw defensive guys, second and third player, the play's kind of already over. The first guy on the scene is making the tackle. You got guys getting there to clean it up when they probably didn't even have to. You know what I'm saying? Extra effort plays. So you can say what you want about Shane Beamer, say what you want about the staff. You can say what you want about being disappointed with the season. You can say anything else you want. You cannot say that these guys quit because they didn't. Even when there was nothing to play for, that's in quotes, they came out and they didn't just play. They played very, very hard. And I think you have to – you got to respect the kids for one. Like, that says something about them. But it does say something about the locker room. It says something about the culture, all the things people roll their eyes about, which is fine. It does matter. And so I do think we have to acknowledge that's why these Beamer teams have not given up. Like, they have not quit. It's a different conversation right now for me if you're talking about a team where the locker room has just said, we're done with this, versus a conversation where you're going, it's been a disappointing season, but these guys have not given up on themselves, their teammates, or their coaches.
It does matter too. And it's a different conversation, Wes, than us sitting here saying, oh man, forget the rest of the season. They've turned the corner by beating Coastal by 44 points. Like, we're not saying that, but those things do matter, right? Because you can look at the context throughout. How many times has a Beamer team, or frankly, a Beamer program, a Beamer tenure, been buried? There's a bunch of examples of that. And obviously the teams have not gotten to the place of the ultimate goal. Last year was the closest. They didn't get there, but it showed that there's a path and a possibility, which I think excited people, and at the same time now has people frustrated because that kind of standard was set, didn't quite reach it, and this year you haven't come close in terms of actual wins and losses to reaching it. But they mattered last season when you did get close, because Wes, after the Old Dominion game and after the 3-3 start, there's not a lot to be fired up about. Kind of a here we go again. And same type deal, because of the things you put into place, working so hard on your locker room and culture, you were able to turn it around and get really, really close. This year it matters for a couple reasons. One, you go beat Coastal by 44 like you're not even supposed to, right? You go, like you said, above and beyond, keep the guys engaged. What if West had won 24-21? Or what if they'd lost? Then you're going into the Clemson game. What if the team has kind of checked out? Clemson doesn't look like they've checked out up in the upstate. It's been a very tough season for them. But what if you got a Gamecocks team that looks like they don't really care, they're not engaged? You're going out, you're spending your money, you're taking your time out of your day, you're taking your family to the Clemson game, and you got a Gamecocks team that looks kind of checked out because they're not making a bowl or they're not making the playoff, and Clemson's up there trying, and then Clemson just works you. Maybe Clemson still works Carolina on Saturday. I don't know. But you can't say that the team has given up. And that also matters, Wes, for the context of getting it fixed, right? You can't say, we got to fix this program, but then say that the culture and the buy-in of the locker room and the team doesn't matter. There's going to be some turnover from this roster, as we know, just naturally in the portal era. There's going to be turnover from year to year. There's probably going to be a more significant than usual amount of turnover, if I had to take an educated guess at this point, between this year's roster and next year's. But all 100-something guys on the team are not turning over, right? So even if Carolina had massive turnover, you're going to have a lot of this roster back. So it's very important that you keep those guys engaged, not only, to end this season with a rivalry game is always important, right? Always consequential. You always want to win, but for getting it fixed. So you can't talk out of both sides of your mouth by saying, I want to get it fixed, but also, who cares if they're still playing hard this year? It doesn't matter. I'm mad about this season. You can be extremely mad, extremely frustrated about the season. You still got to recognize that the guys going out there and playing with that type of effort, it matters. Will it matter on Saturday? In terms of the effort, yes, I think. The result, I don't know. And that's what we'll try to figure out as the week progresses, and we'll ultimately see on Saturday.
Well, I think, man, there's been this just constant chatter all season. Once the season went kind of, where it did, this mass exodus, people are just almost weirdly hoping to be right on, it feels like. Talking, there's Sellers gone right there as a comment on Facebook. Guys, you're going to have, when you have players like Lenore Sellers and players like Dylan Stewart, you're going to have rumors like that. It does not mean that those guys are leaving. So, as of right now, I would expect Sellers and Dylan Stewart to be back. So, I think obviously there are individual conversations with all these guys that you want to keep. And so you can't just magically say, oh, they're all going to be back, because everybody's going to have individual decisions to make. But here's the thing, man, there are a bunch of really good players on this team. I think the offseason will be all about putting the right guys around them, and then obviously putting the correct offensive coordinator on that side of the ball to fix these. dude, we've already seen, you know, I defended Shula early in the season thinking, hey, it's a small sample size. And, I'm thinking, hey, this guy has coached in a Super Bowl. Like, he'll get some of this stuff cleaned up. I mean, I was dead wrong on that, man. Like, you're kind of seeing, like, and I have no problem admitting if I'm wrong on something. Now, I believe you have to give things time to play out. You can't just fire that guy. You couldn't have fired Shula after 3 games. Like, you just couldn't have. If you had been that there's a lot of different cases in history where if you just said, fire that coach, the first sign of adversity, you never would have had all this success after. Like, hundreds of examples of that in college football and football in general. In this case, though, you look back, yeah, I mean, it was not the right hire. I think we all see that. We all can say that now. And, dude, Mike Furry, let's talk a little bit about the job he has done. Just somebody in comments, Jeffrey Long, said the players look like they're having fun on offense. They are, but they're also executing at a pretty high level on offense. And I think, I think the conversation about complexity versus simplicity in offense is kind of interesting. Like, now there are times where you can get too simple. Like, you ever watch a game against maybe your team is playing a kind of just like a really good opponent, and after the game, it didn't go well on offense. You'll hear people say, well, man, they didn't really try anything on offense. It was just too simple. It was the same 2 run calls the whole time. And then you're going, what are we doing out there? Why is there not more to this? Well, then when you try to do too much, what does everybody say? Oh, you got to simplify. You're trying to do too much out there. And so I do think there's something to be said, man, especially when you're looking at an overmatched opponent. Like, if you are, look at the difference between SC State and Coastal. If you are trying to, like, do some things that the guys just aren't comfortable with, you're putting a ton on the quarterback in terms of reads and multi-progression passing plays and all this stuff. Sometimes it doesn't matter who the opponent is. Like, there could be room to take advantage of the defense you're playing, but if you're not able to execute what you're doing, it's not going to work. Whereas there is such thing as getting too simple. And, I think to an extent, I think A&M kind of the second half of that game, they probably went back in and they're, okay, this is what they're doing to us. Let's start taking some of this away and see if they can adjust, right? And so I think there's a scale here. But against an opponent like Coastal, there is something to be said for, hey, let's put in a plan that just lets our guys go out there, play quick, make good decisions, make fast decisions, have fun. Let's spread the field, get the ball in space, and just let our superior athletes create some distance on the scoreboard and not overly complicate this thing. So I don't think that can always be your answer. We're just going to be super simple. But I think when you have the far better athletes, you don't have to complicate football. And I thought that's what they did, man. They said, get the ball on the perimeter, spread the field. We're going to mix in some creativity as well. You saw the tush push. You saw a couple little reverse plays. You saw even the screen to start the game had some different tweaks to it. It was an unbalanced formation. Even the way they blocked it, you could see Donovan Murph initially runs inside like he's going to do like a crack block almost, and then cuts back outside to block it that way. So they actually completely outnumbered Coastal on the perimeter on that play, and then Jaden did the rest. So I think for South Carolina, I'm not saying Mike Furry should be the OC. I'm not saying what direction they're going to go, but I think you got to give him props for the game plan so far and just leaning into what these guys do and do well.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we know not to relitigate the A&M game, but obviously the second half, you couldn't put up any points, right? We all saw it. But the past 2 games, if you just take those, that's a better performance than we've really seen all season from South Carolina's offense. 2-game sample size, small. We will see what happens against Clemson. It's going to be a test, obviously, on Saturday for, game 3 with Mike Furry calling plays. But I think one of the themes is exactly what you hit on, Wes, in that you kind of get the sense of they're making it a little easier on the guys. They're letting them play. They're letting them play free. And one of the things that I think we all saw like early in the season is we're going, South Carolina is really not putting pressure on defenses by just taking advantage of what is being given to them on a regular basis. Everything seemed really hard at times. Look at the Coastal game, you could see the game plan, and Beamer went into this after the game. It was, hey, we do have the superior athletes. They play a weird style of defense, and that kind of gave you like a PTSD from the Old Dominion game. Right? Oh my gosh, Old Dominion, they played this weird defense, right? But Carolina's game plan was, yeah, we're going to run the ball some. We're going to introduce some new things. But the biggest part of the game plan is we're going to get our guys in space, because what is the worst aspect of Coastal Carolina's defense? If you look at them on tape, they can't tackle in space. They really struggle tackling. Saw that last week against Georgia Southern. I think Georgia Southern's top back went for like 267 yards, and a lot of it was missed tackles. So they said, hey, we're going to put our guys in space and take our chances there. That's going to be the game plan. And they were able to develop some ways schematically to get guys in space, and it ended up playing out from play one, right? Good blocking, broken tackles. We saw broken tackles throughout the game. I think per PFF, West, again, imperfect guide, I think Carolina's backs and receivers had 22 forced missed tackles. So that gives you a little bit more optimism going forward, maybe, of, hey, what does Clemson struggle with defensively? And you might have a little bit more confidence now that the current iteration of the offensive staff for South Carolina can scheme up some things that will help them take advantage of whatever those deficiencies are. So we'll see, of course. Again, nobody's anointing this team for beating Coastal or even beating Coastal handily. But they did what you would like to see, and it was positive overall.
How about the use of Lenora Sellers, man, the last 2 weeks? The use of him in red zone situations. He looked as confident as a runner as we have seen him in quite some time on Saturday. So I was sitting there going, all right, this is good for South Carolina to see. But at a certain point, I was like, all right, let's hold it. Let's slow this thing down. Like you don't want him to, take a bunch of hits before the Clemson game. But I do think wanting to kind of build up his confidence, get him back going. I mean, guys, I'd be showing the Clemson game from last year to Lenora Sellers on loop all week. Like, you know what I mean? Like, hey, these guys can't tackle you. Like, I would be that is the place we need you to mentally go going into this game, is that they are physically incapable of bringing you to the ground. And I don't care how many of them are around you. And I don't know why it looks like I'm in a basement all of a sudden if you're on the video version, but we're just going to go with it. Like to go natural light, but it's not working for us. But anyway, man, I just thought some of the creativity we saw was, there's been more creativity the last couple of weeks, really, than there was at all at any point the rest of the year. And we see the tush push with Brady Hunt, which I love. There's a lot you can run off of that, I think, as well. It was a good show me thing. I couldn't help but think would have been nice to have that in on some of these short yardage situations earlier in the year, frankly. And we'll see what it does. This is not a good stop in the run Coastal team, right? Like that, Carolina, they got multiple backs involved, multiple backs over 5 yards, over 6 yards of carry, explosive runs. Let's say it for what it is. You're not always going to be able to just mash that nose tackle for the opponent back. But I think it'd be a good look against some SEC teams too. It's going to be I got to imagine we're going to see this thing again next week if there's short yardage. And there's a lot of different things you can run off of it. So the creativity has been good, man. They did this without Dylan Stewart, without Nick Harbor. I think it's worth mentioning. and just went out and did what they were supposed to do defensively as well, man. I feel like there's not a whole lot to say about the defense. They kind of just went out and did their job. There were a couple of like good Coastal drives where Coastal was in some short yardage situations and they said, we're going to go for it. And it was like the defense just flipped the switch and said, we're going to attack, and created some negative plays to get off the field. The early forced fumble by Brian Thomas Jr. was obviously a key play. I thought Sean Murphy played like a madman. That was probably his best game. Jalen Kilgore, I thought, had a good game.
Yep.
I thought Des stepping in for Dylan, I thought that would probably be JT Gear to step in for Dylan. Des gets the start and did some good things, man. That's maybe a little something to keep an eye on for the future. DeMarcus Leach played a lot at corner. Good positive reps for him as a true freshman. So did you have any takeaways on the defense, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, I would go back to the stat I mentioned. You would have been very concerned if Coastal came again. It's kind of weird because their offensive coordinator is an air raid guy, but they have transitioned more into, particularly when they had Samari Collier in the mix at quarterback, to a run-based offense. They were going to be more limited in this game because their quarterback, with Collier out, not a very mobile guy, as we saw. And so that was going to limit you in addition to the talent gap. But you would have been concerned if you came out of this thing and said, oh, boy, Coastal ran for 150 yards. They averaged 1.6 yards a carry. So you got them into a throw game. The defense definitely stepped up when they had some of those third and shorts, those fourth and shorts. And again, because you flipped the scoreboard early, it put more pressure on Coastal. They still had to punt a bunch, right? But as the game went on, they had to go for some of those fourth downs, and the defense did a really nice job of forcing some pressure, doing a nice job in man coverage, batting some balls down, hitting some guys, forcing some errant throws. But you didn't let Coastal do what they wanted to do on offense, which is good. And Wes, anytime you pitch a shutout, that's a good day at the office. So I thought, again, kind of matching the theme of the game, they did what they should have done. I think there are a lot of good. I had the same kind of takeaways in terms of standouts that you did. Nick Barrett had another really good game. I mean, it's been fun to watch him all season, even in the midst of a challenging year. He's been a guy that's just really stepped up and has gone from a guy who was a role player his entire career to now becoming a starter, and now, frankly, getting himself a little bit of like late round NFL draft buzz. So I thought he was another one that stood out too. Let's tell everybody about Palmetto Golf and Belts, palmettogolfing.com. Brandon Cohn, Gamecock fan, member of Gamecock Central, always hanging out on the Insiders Forum. If you are a golfer or you're looking for a Christmas gift for that golfer in your life, check out palmettogolfing.com. Custom golf towels, belts, tees, and gloves. Variety of designs and colors. He's got the Palmetto Tree and Moon with the state of South Carolina blue. He's got the garnet. The needlepoint belts have been a huge hit among members of the Insiders Forum on Gamecock Central, as have all the products, frankly. Needlepoint belts, extremely well made. I've got one. Know a bunch of buddies that wear them to church, work, casual, business, whatever it may be. Extremely well made and a lot more affordable than a lot of the other retail or online options out there. Again, Palmetto Golf and Belts, if you're a golfer or you're looking for a gift for that golfer in your life, got to check them out. Always running specials. Go support local. Palmetto Golf and Belts at palmettogolfing.com.
And also, let me tell you about our friends over at Game Time, the Game Time app, and GameTime.co. I am pumped up for Rivalry Week. I know most of our listeners, a lot of our listeners, maybe already have tickets to the game. Maybe you're a season ticket holder, but if you've been thinking about going to the game on Saturday and you just don't have your tickets yet, hit up our friends at Game Time and download the Game Time app. Like I've told people every single time I do this read here, I use this app to get to the World Series. So if they can get you in the World Series, they can get you in any event that you can think of. And there are just a ton of different ways that this app helps you get your tickets at a convenient, low price, and a ton of advantages to you as the fan. You can see the view of that ticket from your seat on your phone before you buy. The prices include fees, so you know your total up front. You can buy tickets in seconds once you have the app with just 2 taps. Plus, all tickets are backed by the Game Time guarantee and the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. To take the guesswork out of buying your tickets with the Game Time app, download the Game Time app today. You can create an account. You can use the code OWN3 for $20 off your first purchase, though terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code ON3 for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download the Game Time app today. I've got the app. Chris has got the app. Just get the app as well. At some point, you're going to need it. Concerts, other events. Maybe you already have season tickets to Gamecock football, but there are other things you want to go. Comedy shows. All that's on there too. So shout out to Game Time for being a sponsor for us here on GC Live. All right, we're going to close this thing out with a few more thoughts, and then we're going to get on out of here. Probably programming note, we'll let you know a time, but obviously no show on Thursday. That'd be Thanksgiving. We will do our South Carolina versus Clemson big preview show on Friday at some point. So be on the lookout for that. Looking forward to diving into this thing, man. The only thing that stinks about it being this week, rivalry week, once they went to 12-game college football schedules, rivalry week being on Thanksgiving, it takes a little bit of kind of the lead up in terms of previews and coaches speaking and all these different things. Takes a little bit of that out of it going into the game, but obviously going to be an important one for South Carolina. Let's get a couple of more thoughts on the Coastal win before we close this thing out, man. I'm trying to go back through my notes to see what we haven't covered. Young receivers, dude. Jaden Sellers, Donovan Murph, Vandrevius Jacobs didn't do much this game, but we've seen him emerge this year. Brian Rowe didn't do a ton this game, but you saw some flashes. He had a one-handed catch out on the perimeter. That was very impressive. I mean, those guys were really good. Like Jaden Sellers has already kind of exceeded and outplayed his ranking. What was very fun to see was, I mean, he's kind of far along as a wide receiver, dude. Like, he's a pretty developed player, plays with confidence. You saw the speed, you saw the game-breaking ability, you saw the vision in space. I think there's a lot to like there. And then let's keep it with skill players. There's been a lot of talk. Jordan Howell continues to emerge. 2 good weeks for him. Is very good. It seems like they found something getting the ball to him as a receiver out of the backfield as well. He's made some big plays doing that. And Chris just has a knack for making missed tackles look easy. It's kind of, you know, some guys just are pure power. Like, they just run through a tackle. Other guys have that kind of Ace Sanders, like phone booth. I can make you miss in a phone booth. You know, just they have to like have this sort of juke or something to make you miss. When you look at Jordan Howell, it's like a subtle, he almost does it at full speed, but opponents just seem to struggle to get a clear shot on him, which I think is a natural thing not all guys kind of have the ability to do.
Yeah, he has a knack too, I think, just from a patience standpoint. You know, you're right, Wes. When on the Jaden Sellers, you mentioned this earlier on play one, you know, you see somebody flying down the field and go, who is that? And then it's Jawarn Howell. You're, wow. Because, I mean, you pointed out in your takeaways piece, I think he was like the farthest guy from Sellers at one point on that play. And then all of a sudden he's downfield catching up, looking for work. And then you just see what he did in the run game and pass game. And, you know, saw the screenplay where he's running with patience. He's kind of letting his blocks develop, but then he can accelerate pretty quickly and find additional space, break tackles. So, you know, he's a guy that has continued to come along. I know you know, one of the things everybody's saying, why wasn't he playing more earlier? And I don't have a great answer for that other than, look, guys can still develop throughout the course of a season. So maybe it was part of that. Maybe there was an element of, hey, Jawarn Howell should have been playing earlier in the season. It's kind of hard to argue that at this point. Maybe the answer is both. But, you know, with him and Fuller, and they played together on the field the past couple weeks at times. They've got some packages in there. He's certainly been kind of a revelation the past couple weeks. And certainly think when you look out there on Saturday against Clemson, he's going to be out there on the field a little bit more. Wes, it was good to see Jared Brown also, you know, not a young guy, but a senior former Coastal Carolina receiver, who was out there play one, threw a great block, got an opportunity to catch a pass, did some good things. That was good to see as well. And I think another example of a guy that, season has not gone how he envisioned individually or as a team, still out there making some things happen. So a lot of individual performances, I think, that are worth shouting out.
Yeah, I think Jared wanted this one, man. Former team. That was kind of cool. I feel like there was a little bit of, all right, let's get Jared in the mix for this one. Try to let him make some plays, and he did. I would say this, man. There was some talk. I'll close it out with this. I didn't really have any problems with how they managed the game. Like, there was some talk about the second half and keeping the starters in. There was talk about, why are they playing Luke instead of young quarterbacks? And I think so. So here's the thing: the third quarter had like 2 drives because Coastal had a long drive and South Carolina had a long drive. So, I kind of thought at halftime maybe Lenora Sellers' day is over. But you got to remember, what did we just see in terms of second half play 1 week prior, and you have a completely new play caller. 2 games for Mike Fury. If you're going to beat Clemson, Lenora Sellers has got to play well. And so I imagine the thought process is you need to go to the locker room. You need to kind of reset, do your whole halftime thing, and then you need to come back out and you need to play well. You need to see the ball go through the hoop. You need to play well coming out after the half too. And so you're going to give your starters one more drive. That's all it ended up being. You need one more drive, and then you get everybody else in. Okay, well, why don't you play Luke Doty instead of young quarterbacks? Do you know, what an absolute trash move it would have been to preach culture and love your brother and we're about more than football around here, to then turn around and not give Luke Doty one drive on senior day against the team from his hometown and his second to last game? He's probably not going to play against Clemson. Like that would have been such a against everything you preach move. So Doty's the number 2 quarterback. He went out there. They gave him his drive. No problem with that. And then you got the young guys in, man. I had literally no problem with how they managed things.
Yeah, I agree. You got 1 drive. You didn't play the entire game. You got everybody else a little bit of work. You were never going to get 4 quarterbacks, 10 drives each. It just wasn't going to happen that way. You're right. The third quarter was very limited in terms of possession. So made a ton of sense, and you were able to get Cutter in. Then you were able to get Air in for the first time in like a passing situation. So that was good. I mean, I don't see any huge issue with it either. Made total sense.
All right, y'all, we got to get off here. Appreciate y'all hopping on. Appreciate y'all joining us. Appreciate all of our sponsors, too. We'll be back. We'll let you know a time. We'll be back on Friday. South Carolina Clemson. Rivalry week is here. We'll be breaking that down, of course, throughout the week on GamecockCentral.com, and then big preview show on Friday. Again, appreciate y'all coming on. For Chris, I'm Wes. Y'all have a good one.